After the thrills we got from around the world in the first week of this year's professional gameplay, I had big expectations moving into the second week of competition, and let me tell you now, it didn't disappoint. We saw some teams continue their great form from the first week, some teams bounce back from a poor start to the season, and across all regions some absolutely incredible solo plays. Many people have said it, and I said it in my previous video, but the fact that we've moved away from such a heavy Jaeger or Maya utility dump meta, it's just made gameplay so much more enjoyable to watch, and I imagine it's the same for the players and casters alike. I'm really glad that Ubisoft got a lot of these changes implemented to the game early doors, as it means we're going to go into the Invitational in May in a much more enjoyable gameplay meta than we were 6 months ago, and I'm absolutely hyped for that competition. And on that note, I've been thinking about making a video about the teams I really hope will get to face up against each other at the Invitational, so let me know in the comments down below if that's something you'd be interested in watching, and also let me know what matchups you would like to see the most at the 6th Invitational. If you enjoy this video and any other videos on my channel, then a like and subscribe would be really appreciated, as it helps grow the channel. And just want to say as well, thank you for everyone, if you're watching this again, that did subscribe after the last video. I really appreciate that. So now, let's jump into some of my highlights from the competition we saw in week 2. Starting off in LATAM, we had FaZe looking really strong for another week on the bounce, and after taking a close 8-7 win to Team 1, they moved on to the second playday, where they had a convincing win on Cafe 7-2 against the Black Dragons roster, which consisted of a lot of the old FaZe players, so it was a grudge match, and as much as Black Dragons were disappointing in that game, I've been really impressed personally with how these 4 players from MIBR have really taken on the challenge of stepping up onto a bigger org and just being bigger shoes to fill, and they've done excellent, so let's see if they can keep it up. Team Liquid also had a good week for themselves, picking up a convincing 7-3 win against Ints on the 4th playday. They looked very tidy, and I noticed specifically that they had great executes in the late round when the pressure is most on. It's looking like they made the right decision with these players sticking together, as they really look like they're all working on the one wavelength. All these players really seem to understand what their role is and what their teammates are going to need them to do in each situation, and consequently they don't seem to struggle with what a lot of teams do when they've just built a new roster, where the team just seems to feel so disjointed throughout the map, especially on attack. And of course, on top of that, gun skill is never going to be a problem, as we know what each of these players are capable of, and when you can have a team that works really well with strategy and just working together, but also can absolutely frag and click heads, then that is the making of a great team, because as a team collectively, in my opinion, you can only go so far if you only have one or the other. It's fine to maybe have players on the team that can do one better than the other, but when you've got a full team that can do both and really do both, you can frustrate your opposition massively because they just feel like they can't do anything, whether that be run in and try and get kills as surprise or really think about strategy and try and outplay you. They just can't do anything. So yeah, teams like that are very exciting to watch. I look forward to seeing what they can do this season. Ninjas in Pyjamas were victim of a big upset this week. They're struggling in easy games and went on to lose 7-4 to Furia after the day before only edging out Santos 7-5, which for their standards is a disappointing performance. I'm not really sure what's going on with them, to be honest. They seem to be struggling, and I personally hope this roster stick it out and stay together. They've been together for a while now, even since the 6th Invitational has been a year, and they were together before that. And as much as they've been disappointing, I have to big up Pino, as he's really putting the team on his back at the moment. Muzi as well, but Pino specifically is having so many impact kills. On the other hand, Furia really bounced back well from finishing bottom of the league last season. They've been on a good run in the last few months, qualifying for the 6th Invitational, securing their spot in the league this year, and picking up some big results in the first few games, so shouts out to them. Okay, moving on to EU, and we saw so many great games, great plays, and a load of multi-kills in EU this week. Rogue looked really good. They're starting to build their confidence now with back-to-back wins, steamrolling Virtus Pro 7-2. They played to their strengths but still kept the good discipline, even with the simple things like late round rotates to make their executes more easier where less guns are looking. Very impressive. They could definitely be a top 4 contender again this season if they keep playing like that, but we're gonna have to wait and see. On the other hand, something just didn't look right with Virtus Pro. They visibly didn't look very positive and had a rough game against Rogue. I think personally on defense, they tried to counter aggression with aggression, and that's very hard against the gunners of Rogue when they're in form. Pasha was really the only one stepping up in that game, and they just seemed to be very dejected. Take this clip in the background here for example. Rask just puts himself in the shower room unsupported, no reinforcements, ADS or utility, and he literally just got cut off from the shower corridor window whilst being wallbanged from the bottom of Small Tower. Virtus Pro are a good structured team, and something just doesn't seem right for them to be playing so loosely like this. Jumping back into Rogue, I just wanted to mention specifically this round where I absolutely loved the Small Tower hold as a sort of pocket strat, and the way they held it with Umai and Jaeger kind of reminded me of Garage Rafters on Clubhouse. You saw Leon pick up a quad kill, very reminiscent of those big multi-kills you'll see where they're popping up and down behind the half wall and the Rafters of Garage, taking out heads below. It seems potentially that this strat is not consistent enough to become a mainstay when defending kitchen and dining on Oregon, but I do think it will be cool to see if this strat potentially develops, and if it does, I'll also be interested to see if people come up with some creative ways to counter it. Touching quickly on Vitality, they picked up a good 7-5 win against Empire, and the one thing I just wanted to mention is that I was really impressed with their coordination. Take a clip like this for example, where they use a teammate's smoke grenade to cover the player at the bottom of garage using a grenade to displace the player playing at the top of rafters by the garage window. This is one type of thing that just really makes me love Siege, seeing the coordination and the creativity come out of teams, and right now it's looking like the roster changes they made are working out well for them. On the BDS game versus Trainhard, I was very impressed to see that Rafał stepped up massively in this game, and he was a reason that they were able to put a lot of the rounds on the board. Obviously we all love to see Shaiko tear teams apart, and he had another great game, and we love to see Brede clutch, but seeing the rest of the roster really be able to step up when they're needed and not just leave it always down to Shaiko is very impressive, and we of course already knew this, but sometimes it can be easily forgotten when Shaiko's putting so many kills on the board every single game. And I think this BDS Trainhard game was a reminder of what the rest of the players on the roster can do. Every single one of them brings something to the table. And on that game, I want to give a quick shout out to Blaz, as he's really stepped up to the plate for his team and doing the role that they need him to do. Even against such a strong team of fraggers like BDS, he was still able to put kills on the board and have an impact in rounds. So big up to him for that. He could definitely be pushing his way to one of the top fraggers over the coming seasons. Cowana have seemed to fall off the pace slightly since their Playday 1 win against Rogue 7-2. But similar to when Kendrew was on Navi and they weren't having the best showing last season, he's showing up again no matter what, even if his team is winning or losing. You've got to have massive respect for a player like that. When the going gets tough, they're still counted for, and having a mentality like that is what a championship player is made of. It's not always going to be smooth sailing. Sometimes you've got to be there to drag yourself through the hard times, and he seems like he's doing that for them right now. They took a hard 7-1 loss to G2, and I've got to say, G2 are looking really invigorated. They were suffocating Cowana on attack, and it felt like anywhere Cowana moved they were being watched, wallbanged, grenade, nitroed or traded, and they were clinical and had great intel game. With so many of the players now gone from the Dynasty team, it's very nice to see that they're still able to keep the core fundamentals that made G2 successful over the years. And I think for that, a lot of credit has to go to Shas and Sua for still being able to install this into the new players that signed for them. And similar to Cowana, Secret seem to have also fallen off the pace since their Playday 1 win against G2. They struggled and took a hard 3-7 loss to an in-form Navi on Cafe. As much as Secret were poor, something that I want to pull from their game was a very interesting fireplace mining hold. They used a pulse similar to how pulse is used on Teller's archives on Consulate, where everyone plays below with nitros. They lost it narrowly, but I love to see that strategy as it's not something we see very often, and I like how they took fundamentals from another hold on a different map and tried to take those fundamentals onto a new site to make it more viable. It will be interesting to see in the coming months and this season if anyone else tries to implement this type of strat and changes it around or just does the same thing, because I think it's very cool and it has good potential. But the star of this show once again was Doki, going 16-8. He's really starting to build consistency now, and as I mentioned in my previous video, if he can do this for his team every single week and keep up this consistent form, he can really take his team to the top and most definitely secure their spot in the top 4 by the end of the split. And he's definitely been one of the top performers throughout all of EUL and potentially the whole of pro competition in these first few weeks. So with my favourite moments from the EUL wrapped up, let's jump into North America. We saw Disrupt Gaming head to Clubhouse to take on SSG, and despite J90 having another huge round in the Clubhouse basement with the SAS shotgun getting a 3k, SSG managed to take the game to Disrupt and win the game 7-4. SSG had a good game. Luke had a disappointing game, however, not dropping a single kill, but it was likely his first proper time playing in a big game on stage at LAN, and he still did his role and support well. But I've got to say, the rest of the 4 players really proved that they're all capable with putting the team on their back without Canadian. I look forward to seeing if Luke picks up in the coming weeks as his team gets even better or not, and it will also be interesting to see, will these other 4 players have the mental fortitude to consistently week in week out have big impact games. We know that every single player on this team has great ability and great understanding of how to play the game as a team, so I think that they can do so, but of course it will be hard for them not having that big figure like Canadian on the team, so the pressure's really on. But I'll be looking out for that. Considering this is their first official game without Canadian, you've got to say massive respect for how they were able to have such great performances between the 4 of them, and it definitely gives them something to build off as we move towards the 6th Invitational and they attempt to retain their World Championship. TSM bounced back from last week with a punishing 7-0 win over Exet. They definitely improved massively over last week's loss against Beast Coast. Each player stood up and was counted for, and two of the most senior players on the team achieved in Geo especially. To be honest though, I don't feel like this was the most tantalizing performance from TSM, but more so a very disappointing showing from Exet. We know that they have talented players on the team, and maybe they just need to get some more games into the stride of their tier 1 competition. Will they find their footing, or will they continue to struggle for the remainder of the stage? I look forward to finding out. Mirage faced up against OXG, and although he slowed down, Hot and Cold started the game on a tear. I imagine after his great performance last week, he wanted to show that he didn't just have a big game because he was playing his old team. Hot and Cold and Benji specifically, I feel, were spearheading the team, collecting important kills in the early round on attack to set them up well for their executes. You gotta give massive credit for Benji for how quickly he's hit the ground running in his first season in the league at this level of competition. It's not an easy thing to do. Kino on OXG's side is showing to be a great support player. He gives you that clutch vibe you feel with some of the best support players like Charlo and Bride, and honestly those are two of my favourite players in the game, so I'll be watching out for Kino. And talking on support, here's Dream from Mirage showing how to clutch on smoke in a 2v1.
In such a tense scenario right now, he can't fully check his left angle until he knows the push is coming. Chucks that smoke out at the very final second here. Now gonna try to rotate in, was checking to make sure his opponent didn't run through that. Laxing takes the heat. He didn't cross it yet either, so Eat might actually go down here if he's not careful. Laxing at literally a sliver of health. One shot is all that Dream needs. Now Yaga needs to trade it, but where is he? There's no sign of him anywhere on the map. He can't find it. The time.
Oxygen had a great showing, and the two new players really did their part to lead their team to a big 7-3 win against Mirage, both the players going 10-5 and filling their roles appropriately. Although on support, Dream and Loading didn't have great games, but if they can put in a performance on support that the other Mirage players are putting in on entry, they can still be a very dangerous team this year. And moving on to the final game I want to cover, and the team I'd say has looked most dangerous in the NAL to go on and achieve things, I wanted to round up with Darkzero versus Soniqs. Darkzero looked clinical here against another good team in the region, and every player in the roster is now firing as NJR is now starting to get into his stride. He had a good game. As I mentioned in my teams to look out for video, there's a lot less pressure on Hyper to have to be the main provider for kills. Hyper was quiet in this game, and not from having a poor game, but NJR was just picking up the slack for him, and I got a shout out to Eclipse. He's such a valuable player as he's so consistent and often tends to be one of the top performers in the lobby. And funnily enough, we saw another small tower hold. I'm interested, as I said, to see how this will potentially develop over time. And talking of strategy, in the same round as this, we saw another great trick we rarely see, with the Mav going vertically to open a wall below with Sophia lined up perfectly to kill someone through it. Beautiful stuff. If NJR can build off this performance, he could be the addition that sets them apart from the rest of the region as the top team. With so many other big teams having new rosters or performance issues, the spot is definitely up for the grabs and theirs for the taking, in my opinion, for the players on Darkzero. And I'm happy that NJR quickly got over his disappointing first game performance. Hopefully he can keep leveling up. And on the other hand, I don't think Sonic should be too disheartened with their 7-4 loss. DZ look very strong, and it's hard to play against a team like Darkzero when all their star players are firing with such good support players to back them up. And that's where I'm going to wrap it up. Let me know down in the comments below what teams you've been most impressed with so far and what teams you think have been disappointing. Thanks for everyone that stopped by, and if you're still here at the end of the video, you're a G, so thank you for that. If you enjoyed this video, a like would be appreciated, and drop a sub if you want to see more content like this on your timeline. Catch me around a similar time next week for the third week of competition, and in the meantime, enjoy the games whether you're watching all regions or just one in particular. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.